faith in times of disaster. We often think of disasters of hurricanes or some other natural event. At that time, when a disaster hits, faith is more important than ever. And that's why our St. Vincent de Paul family is so very important. Whether it's locally or nationally or internationally, the Society of St. Vincent de Paul is there to respond so people can see our action as God's love when they face disaster. When you think about it, during a disaster, you lose everything. But is that really true? If you keep your faith, you have everything. And that's what our show about today is, about that faith, that no matter what we face, that faith can lead us through the disaster of a hurricane, the disaster of homelessness, the disaster of hunger. It's our job as a St. Vincent de Paul family to respond to those disasters, and today we'll talk about just what's happening here in the Baton Rouge Diocese.
Sister Louise de Marillac helped to form the Daughters of Charity, a new form of religious life dedicated to serving the poorest of the poor. Prior to this time, Catholic nuns lived a life of strict seclusion in monasteries. The dream of St. Vincent de Paul and Louise was to take consecrated life into the city streets.
We all have storms in our personal lives, challenges that really call on us to focus on our faith. Father, why is our faith so important in the storms of life?
You know, I love the imagery of the storms in the scripture because we know what that means. We've seen that in our lives, whether it's a hurricane or a flood or just an earthquake or any other kind of natural disaster, and they seem to be growing lately. We seem to constantly be encountering more storms. And when we think about what God says to us, He says to us, will you let me into the storm of your life? In particular, when Peter and the disciples were in the boat and the storm was raging all around them and they were afraid and they were terrified. And Jesus called Peter out of the boat, and in great fear but in trust, Peter stepped out of the boat. But when he moved his focus and his gaze from Jesus, that's when he began to sink. And that's true of our own lives, right? If we can keep our eyes focused on Him, we can weather the storms. But what happened? Peter began to sink. Jesus reached out to him, picked him up, and placed him into the boat, into the safety of the boat. And I think that's the invitation. No matter what the storm, you've lost your job, you've lost your home, your marriage has fallen apart, there's been a cancer diagnosis or some kind of medical illness in your life or in your family, someone's died. All of those different storms that we face in our spiritual journeys, God wants us to invite Him into the boat and to trust that if we let Him, He will calm the storms, calm the waves, calm the wind, and allow us to find peace. Now, the challenge is in the middle of the storms, we want to give up. We want to throw in the towel. We want to just kind of be. And God reminds us that as every storm begins, every storm ends. As every sun rises, every sun sets. And the same is true of those storms in our lives. We just have to simply trust Him, not be afraid, invite Him into the boat with us, and let Him ride out the storm with us. So often we get angry with God, and that's okay. Right? When you're in the storm, you can be angry. God can handle our anger and our frustration. But we have to trust Him enough to invite Him in. Let Him sit on the bench with us. Let Him sit beside us. Let Him hold us. And let Him ride the storm out with us.
And there's no storm that God can't handle.
Not at all.
Isn't that something that we all have to remember, whether we're lay, we're religious, no matter what the storm is, God will overcome all.
Yeah, and that should bring great comfort to us, that God is with us, and with Him we can overcome any storm. And yet we know how hard it is. When the grief is overwhelming, when the sadness is just debilitating, when the storm is so strong, that we don't even want to believe God is actually real. It's not uncommon that people easily lose their faith and turn away from God in the storm, and we should never feel ashamed of that. We should never be afraid to come back to Him if we are away and if the storms drive us away, because He always is waiting to welcome us. We simply have to say, Lord, here I am. Get in the boat with me. Help me, journey with me, and show me the way. Yeah.
As members of the St. Vincent de Paul Society, we're called to see the face of Christ in each person we're blessed to serve. And if we do a really good job, they see the face of Christ in us. And in a very, very true sense, so many people, whether there's homelessness, hunger, someone just in need of a helping hand up, when they come to us, they need to feel God's love. In a time that they're in a terrible personal storm, we can be there, and we can be there for them. And if we do a really good job, they can feel God's love, and that's so important.
Without a doubt. What difference can you make in the life of someone who's in that storm? And that's what we're called to do every day, to be Christ for another, to help them weather the storm as they invite Christ into the boat with them.
And that's our invitation to you today. Join our St. Vincent de Paul family and make a difference in the lives of those in need. St. Vincent de Paul is always there for people when they have a disaster in their lives. We're here in the Sweet Dreams expansion with Mike Nola, and St. Thomas More Parish was there for so many people in need during the Great Flood of 2016. And here we are, late 2017, and the work continues.
Absolutely. It was, I think, the date, August 13th, August 14th is when our parish flooded. And it had happened quickly. And the neat thing about it is our pastor for the time, Dewey, who very, very supportive of St. Vincent de Paul, was out of the country. And Father Eddie Martin, a brand new priest, got thrown into this. So who did he come to? He came to St. Vincent de Paul and said, guys, I need help. And we kind of formed a disaster team, and we met every day at 4 o'clock, assessed what we needed to do. And we just went out 7 days a week for several months, just doing what we need, gutting houses, helping people out. And the interesting thing, the whole St. Thomas More community came together, and out of the blue, our activity center became a mini St. Vincent de Paul store. I mean, it had packed with clothing, food, water, supplies, cleaning supplies. We were getting supplies from all over the New Orleans, from Katrina, people we had helped down there. They were coming and sending us stuff. So we had a huge store, and then these young parishioners started organizing it, and it was wonderful. It was just a wonderful team effort, seeing all of us come together, and I think it's made us a better parish after all.
It is powerful when you hear people having disaster in their lives and turning to the church for that helping hand.
Absolutely.
And Father Eddie knew what to do. And let's talk about Sissy Stevens, who is a St. Aloysius Vincentian, headed up furniture assistance, and furniture assistance included appliances. Y'all gave out just tons of those, right? Brand new stuff.
Well, and you had asked me earlier, Michael, we assessed around 40% of our families in St. Thomas More were flooded, so they were in dire need of bedding is a big issue.
Yeah.
So bedding became an issue, and appliances and all. And here comes the program y'all formed, and Sissy, and we formed a team of 2 people, 2 Vincentians, April Howell and Jean K. Brown, who came in and organized it on our end. We were kind of the pilot program to get it started.
Yes.
So it was kind of neat, and we got it rolling, and it was, we had one that came in yesterday, yesterday, our application, right. But it was so organized, and Sissy was just phenomenal in supporting us. She came out to our parish, did a little introduction on it, and we just rolled from there. So that program alone, I can't even, know we helped over 50, 75 families with furniture, with bedding and all. And it was just a wonderful, in fact, people were just amazed when they said, I can go get an appliance at Sherwood Appliances or a bed at O'Lynn's. And it was wonderful. It was probably one of the neatest things that I've done being involved with St. Vincent de Paul.
Well, and we do want to thank Sherwood Appliances and O'Lynn's.
Correct.
Tom O'Lynn.
Wonderful.
And the people at Sherwood, just over the Rufino, it's just awesome coming together and working with us. And I'm going to switch subjects real quick, just for a second. We're in the Sweet Dream Shelter.
Right.
And you're a board member. Isn't it great to see the progress on this building?
Absolutely. It's this is going to be something our community is in well need of, and everybody turns to St. Vincent de Paul in times of need, and this is going to fulfill a big need in our community. So, yeah, I'm very excited about it. So,
yes,
especially since it's the first time I'm in the facility and get to see actual brick and mortar up. So
that's right. We're October 2017. By Christmas, we should be open and making a difference.
Right.
Mike, you make a difference, and we thank you so much for all the work you do. We ask everyone to get involved with our St. Vincent de Paul Society. Turn the nightmare of disaster into sweet dreams for someone truly in need.
Welcome to St. Vincent de Paul News. I'm Madison Acaldo. As reported on the FamVin website, Jack Murphy of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul shares his thoughts in the article entitled Witness, Examining Our Own Attitudes About the Poor. Little children, let us not love in word or speech, but in deed and in truth. These words of the Apostle John voice an imperative that no Christian may disregard. With this opening, Pope Francis established the first World Day of the Poor. The entire message compels us to action. This foundational message from the Holy Father comes at a time when people living on the periphery of our society are increasingly being blamed for causing their own condition. We know from experience that simple contact with those in need doesn't necessarily connect us with a person or family. Vincentians know, however, that we must gain empathy before we can express compassion. Otherwise, we are not doing charity out of love, we are doing it out of obligation. Here, Pope Francis has a reminder in his message for the World Day of the Poor. We may think of the poor simply as the beneficiaries of our occasional volunteer work, or of impromptu acts of generosity that appease our consciences. However, good and useful, such acts may be making us sensitive to people's needs and the injustices that are often their cause. They ought to lead to a true encounter with the poor, and a sharing that becomes a way of life. If we truly wish to encounter Christ, we have to touch his body and the suffering bodies of the poor, as a response to the sacramental communion bestowed in the Eucharist. So, the question becomes, how can we use the encounters we have with our neighbors in need to help raise empathy among our fellow parishioners? Sometimes, facts can help clarify misconceptions. For many people, they may not know the root cause of problems we see all the time, such as half of U.S. renters paid more than 30% of their income on housing in 2015. General recommendations are that a person/family not spend more than 30% of their income on housing. In New York City, median household incomes rose 6.6% from 2005 to 2015. Median gross rents rose 18.3% during the same time. Research shows that the primary cause of homelessness, particularly among families, is lack of affordable housing. There are many contributors to a family's financial situation that are beyond control. As poverty moves to more and more suburban locations, people may need you to remind them that the other may be living next door. As the Pope instructs us, Blessed, therefore, are the open hands that embrace the poor and help them. They are hands that bring hope. Blessed are the hands that reach beyond every barrier of culture, religion, and nationality, and pour the balm of consolation over the wounds of humanity. Blessed are the open hands that ask nothing in exchange, with no ifs or buts or maybes. They are the hands that call down God's blessing upon their brothers and sisters. The poor are not a problem. They are a resource from which to draw as we strive to accept and practice in our lives the essence of the gospel. That's this week's St. Vincent de Paul News. Hope to see you again.
Since 1833, the Society of St. Vincent de Paul has been serving those in need. The Society's 97,000 trained volunteers in the United States provided 17.9 million hours of volunteer service in 2015, helping 23.8 million people through visits to homes, prisons, and hospitals.
Sometimes when we read through history, we're really surprised at how history kinds of always repeats itself. But sometimes, there's a start. And I think St. Vincent de Paul in his life, you could say there were many things that he started and established. And one of the things people don't realize is in the 1600s, there was a shortage of priests. Does that sound familiar? Well, in his time, there was that shortage. And he determined that he wanted to do something about that as well. And so he actually established 53 upper-level seminaries, all focused at producing good priests that could spread that gospel message throughout Paris and France in the way that his Vincentian charism could appropriately make the world a better place. There's nothing better than the gospel to embrace. St. Vincent de Paul understood that. He also understood that embracing the gospel meant action. It wasn't about preaching. Whether it's times of disaster, whether it's just, poverty beyond what the human mind can imagine, Vincent understood that he had to tackle those things, and he did so with great faith. And people are often amazed with what a great fundraiser St. Vincent de Paul was. He was an awesome fundraiser. He was one of the first people to print a daily paper. What did he have in his paper? The number of people he was feeding, the number of people he was sheltering, the number of people that was in the hospitals that he and St. Louise de Marlac had opened. Talking about how many children were being cared for in the orphanages. And why did he want this daily paper out? Why did he have collection places for people to donate money? Why did the Queen give him her jewels to help in his mission of poverty? Because he was an inspiration. He was charismatic. He made sure people understood what the gospel call was, which is not to look at what my needs are, but instead look at others. Wealth is not what I have in the bank. Wealth is what I can help people to acquire. And that acquisition was the gift of faith. So many people reflect on the number of meals St. Vincent de Paul served, or the number of orphanages that he gave care to children. It's all about spreading the gift of faith. Because one thing St. Vincent de Paul understood very well, there doesn't need to be a lot of suffering in the world. If we just follow Christ's call to love one another. Holy Thursday, one of my favorite times relative to our faith, because we all have the opportunity to examine our faith, examine our sinfulness. It's an awesome opportunity to think about what was Christ primary last message to each and every one of us: to love one another. Vincent de Paul understood in the 1600s, if we love one another, it solves all the problems. Think of our world today. What does loving one another not solve? If we all did that, think of national, regional, whatever it may be, what problems wouldn't be solved? They would all be solved because we would be following Christ's message of loving and caring for one another. For over 20 years, the St. Vincent de Paul Community Pharmacy has served our area. We provide prescription medicines for those who have nowhere to turn for this most basic healthcare need. Please, if you need your medicine or you know a family member that needs their medicine, contact us. Kay, how can they get in touch?
383-7450.
Give us a call today and spread the word so that we can ensure no one goes without their prescription medication. At St. Vincent de Paul, we're thankful for so many things, and we're particularly thankful for our relationship with Constable Reginald Brown. All through the years, we've had such a great relationship. And people think of Constable Brown at Thanksgiving time. And that's a time where holiday helpers make such a difference in the community. But every year after Holiday Helpers, you would bring through the years leftovers of St. Vincent de Paul or things that you had collected for St. Vincent de Paul. I know last year it was ice cream.
Right.
And why is it important for people to get involved in the community? Whether St. Vincent de Paul, Holiday Helpers, whatever the case may be, how can people really make a difference?
People make a difference with giving just by, sometimes people say one man's trash is another man's treasure. At St. Vincent de Paul, Holiday Helpers, we've never turned down anything that someone offers because they give it from the heart. And when you're giving from the heart, you're giving because of a need. At St. Vincent de Paul, there's a need 7 days a week, 365, 366 days a year, a need. Holiday Helpers, we look at a need for those 3 holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter. But last year for Thanksgiving, we had an abundance of ice cream left. We always have food left, and that's why I would always say at Thanksgiving for Holiday Helpers, there's never a waste.
Never.
Because whatever we serve on Thursday, whatever is left, we bring it to St. Vincent de Paul on Friday. Yeah. And of course, you all can use it that weekend, and other things you can continue to use. But we encourage people to continue to give to St. Vincent de Paul year-round because you have a need for, during the winter months, I can remember, we call you because we need to house someone that's down on their luck, out, and not a place to stay, need a warm place to stay, get out of the cold, out of the weather. Or if it's in the summertime, the heat, get out of here. So, when you give to St. Vincent de Paul, then you're giving because there is a need. There's always going to be a need, and we just think that that's so important. Besides the medicine, the uniforms, the school supplies you give to kids, the food, the housing you give to families. I mean, it's unquestionable that St. Vincent de Paul fulfills so many needs, and God has blessed you to be able to do that. Whatever we have that we can give from the least of us, it certainly can help strengthen some of the brothers and sisters and the kids out there that are in need.
And it all makes a difference. And no matter what challenges we have, we can make a difference. And one story I'd love to hear from you, I'm going to ask you to share it, is how you, Holiday Helpers, always little challenges, you overcame them. So you started off at one place and you moved. Tell us a little bit about that.
That's where you've got to rely on faith.
Yes.
We started off at the end on the lake. That was where the discussion was held, and that's where the first dinner was held. Well, shortly afterwards, the inn on the lake was destroyed. Well, not destroyed, it was demolished. They demolished it because the state took that over and made it its facility. We went on to the Belmont Hotel on the Airline Highway. Well, shortly after being there, the Belmont Hotel became vacant, and it was demolished. So now we're saying, man, strike three, you out. You know, we move on to Nicholson Drive to the Ramada Inn Hotel. And we're having the dinner there, and then it's been demolished. Well, that really makes you really say, we've got to have some door open. Well, as God has said, when man shuts one or two doors, God opens two or three. Yeah. And that was the case there. God opened another door. Mayor Tommy McHugh contacted me and said, you know what, let's move that dinner at that time to the Baton Rouge Centralplex, which is in the center of the city. It's for the community. Let's move it there. Now it's the Raising Cane's River Center. We're happily there, doing a great job, and that's where the St. Vincent de Paul Thanksgiving dinner will also be there on Thanksgiving Day, as Holiday Helpers was. But to stir the three places, it almost reminded me that, gee, O ye of little faith. Well, we had a little faith, but we didn't let those places being closed or demolished dissipate our faith. We continued to persist on, and another door opened, and that's where we are. And that has to take a lot and we had no money. We had no other resources of doing anything. We didn't know where we were going to go or what we were going to do. But God opened that door for us.
Well, I tell you what, I thank the day that God opened the door and I got to meet Constable Brown, because St. Vincent de Paul has been enriched, our community has been enriched, and so the challenge for all of us is to say, what can we do for our community, how we can make a difference. We encourage you to get involved with St. Vincent de Paul. Visit us at our website, svdpbr.org, so you can get involved in our ministries that make a difference in the lives of those in need. Disasters happen every day. We think of disasters again as hurricanes, earthquakes, but think about homelessness. For a child, that's a disaster. For an adult, that's a disaster. Being hungry and not knowing where your next meal is coming from, that's a disaster. And that's what our St. Vincent de Paul family does, respond to disasters. We want you to be a part of our ministry. Go to svdpbr.org. Join us today. Get involved and make God's love come to life for those who are vulnerable, for those that are seeking faith and need to see that action. Putting faith in action is what St. Vincent de Paul is all about, and we need your help.